First of all, all the credit goes to Texas Tech, their players, their coaches. They were the team today that had a greater sense of urgency. They played with an unbelievable competitive spirit, and they took it to us from the start. So they deserve all the credit. On our end, I take full responsibility. We defined coming into this game how important winning the rebounding battle would be and finishing plays on the glass. And in the first possession, we put ourselves in deficit. And so I've got to do a better job as a coach in terms of demanding rebounding effort, two-handed rebounds, finishing on the glass, finishing plays by any means necessary. And I didn't do that today. So ultimately, we'll get back to work. And that's something that we understand. When we've been successful, we win the rebounding battle. And when we've lost, we haven't. So I have to do a better job as a coach in making sure we understand how important that is and how we demand from ourselves in that manner. And I'm absolutely up for that job, and we'll make sure that we don't put ourselves in this position again.
What did you see from Heisey in the second half in providing a momentum spark?
Yeah, I mean, Nate, he plays with great energy. I mean, he's got a lot of competitive spirit in how he plays and competes, and I thought specifically he had some big rebounds down the stretch in the second half. So we've continued to count on him, and we know that, he'll bring us a spark as we move forward.
Coach, what were they able to do to kind of stymie your ball pressure in the first half? Because it almost got you back, well, it did get you back into it in the second half.
Yeah, I think in the first half, certainly they were well prepared coming in to space us, and they kept the ball on the move. They got two to the basketball, and Anderson is, as good of a point guard probably as there is in the country, and he was able to kind of pick us apart at times, and their other guys, they know, what their job is on that team. They're very well coached and they're very disciplined. So guys play within their skill set, within their game. So the guys who are great shooters on threes, the guys who are, have different roles do those. And so I just thought they stayed ahead of the play because they moved the basketball, they skipped the basketball, they had a willingness to make the second pass, the third pass, the fourth pass. Many times you'll play against a team in an ego or a willingness. At some point, the other team won't have that. And Texas Tech, they only cared about one thing, and it was making the right play, and they continue to do that, and they put us on our heels.
And one more real quick for me, the rebounding, you stressed obviously, but Blake gets 8 offensive boards. I think he gets 2 putbacks at the end of the half to tighten the game, and he seemed to keep doing that in the second half. Was that one positive aspect on the glass?
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, that's something that we know we can count on from Blake, and obviously the 2 plays just before half gave us a little bit of life in a half that, they were certainly the far more aggressive team. So, I think a couple things, like, Texas Tech's very deliberate in who they choose to guard and not guard. So if you're a guy that they're choosing to help off of, it gives you clean runs at the offensive glass. And we need to either do a great job sealing a body so that we can create an offensive advantage, or getting on the offensive glass. And to your point, I thought, Blake had some moments there where he did a great job with that.
Hi, Coach. How much of a challenge is it defensively to defend a team like Texas Tech that has 3 or 4 really high-level shooters at a time, able to make shots from the perimeter?
Well, I think, they obviously have a great culture and they share the basketball, but they also have to make the shots. And they made timely shots throughout the course of the game. I mean, even when Anderson gets the 4th foul and he's out early in the second half, they count on bringing Tyree Bryant off the bench, who hasn't played as much lately, and he hits big shots from the corner. And then, Petty as a freshman, we're down 65-59, and he hits 2 big shots right away. And so I think, look, they're obviously a team that is as good of a 3-point shooting team, and they're able to space you, and they have a very sound plan in how they go about doing that. And then, when you go on the road, you still have to find a way to make tough shots. Even when the crowd gets into the game, even when we ramp up the intensity, and you just felt like all game long, that became the story, that even though we had better intent and urgency in the second half, they had a little bit more in terms of, the courage to knock down a big shot in a key moment, and it put us on our heels.
You talked about the two petty jumpers after the timeout that McCaslin called. What does that do to your team's mentality when you feel like you've got all the momentum and then he comes out and hits those two big shots?
Yeah, I mean, we talked that whole time out about now it's time for us to string together some stops on defense, and I think we had scored the ball and put ourselves back in position, and we didn't have a good enough defensive on-ball presence. We got to be more physical. We got to demand a collision. We got to get into the ball. He shouldn't be able to dribble into jump shots, especially at that point in the game, because defensively we're trying to force him to try to put it on the floor. We want to have that collision, and we didn't have the collision. He created space. Yeah, he made a contested shot, both of those possessions, but we just got to have better fight and better intent defensively so that he doesn't get to his spots.
TJ, you talked about how they were able to spread you guys out, but what did you think of your ability to help recover and contest? Was it good enough and they just made shots, or did you feel like you weren't as good as you would have liked?
Yeah, no, we weren't as good as we would have liked. I think, I feel like in many cases, like at the point of the basketball, like at the point of the screen, like, Blake's usually pretty reliable that way, and I think our guards, Taman and Killian and Bateman and others, we really get into the basketball, but I think it was our rotations after that. I felt like, they kept moving it and were willing to make the other pass, and they had a stronger will to get to the next pass and the next pass than we did to get to the rotation and take it away. So again, I thought in the first half they were terrific that way, and the second half, I thought, again, we had our moments, but ultimately we weren't quick enough on the rotations. We weren't fast enough to get there. They were able to move the basketball, and again, even with Atwell as prolific of a shooter as he is, I think he was 5 for 9 from three at half. The very fact that he got 9 attempts in a half is crazy based on our focus and intent going into the game.
How do you weigh everything that Killian's given you defensively against the struggles he's having right now offensively?
Yeah, I mean, that's, we're going to continue to find solutions because we know that defensively he's a weapon and he can really guard the basketball and pressure the ball. But obviously, they made choices tonight to essentially leave him unguarded, and his guy was able to be an impactful defender at the rim. So it's something for us that we need to solve. And tonight was the night that it was really exposed. And so we'll continue to work on it and find ways to have solutions to be better for it.
When the guards went on that run a little bit earlier in the year shooting from 3, how did they get out of that, and maybe what lessons can be taken into right now?
Specifically our perimeter players, you're saying?
Yeah.
In terms of shooting slump they were in and how to push forward now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's it's a pretty simple thing. Like you put the work in, you put the time in. You have a coach that's encouraging you. You have teammates that believe in you, and it's trusting the work and it's stepping up in those moments and knocking them down. Like there's not really any other way to go about it. Work harder, demand more, and that's part of this game. And if you really want to win, you pay the dues, and it comes around for you.
What will the next couple of days look like for you preparing for Arizona?
Yeah, tomorrow we'll get back to the practice floor, and we know how important it's going to be going into that game on Monday in terms of our physicality and defensive rebounding. There's probably not a team in the country that is better on the glass and physically in the paint than what they are. So we need to have a great practice tomorrow. We need to have great physicality, have an intent to really make sure that we protect the paint, keep the ball out of the paint, finish on the glass, and then we'll travel tomorrow and get to our game day routine on Monday. But right now it's a tremendous focus on what we need to do in practice so we don't put ourselves in the same spot on Monday that we did today.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
TJ.